When I think of relational, I think it is the nature of the world and the universe. And I'm moved by many different people in that view. So I'm going to use one right now, engaged Buddhism and Thich Nhat Hanh, and interbeing. That everything is connected. People, living things, the rocks, the lights looking at me over there, the chair I'm sitting on, the earth, the sky, the sun, the stars, the moons, etc. That there is no disconnecting, that we are all part of that whole. I really like the ideas of John Schotter in talking to embrace this complexity, because often we get lost in where is self and where is other. And other can be a person, it can be an object, it can be a thought. And for me, when I think of it as interbeing and relational, everything is indeterminate, all things are possible, and everything has cause and effect. And we're caught in this cycle. How do we develop agentive identity? And again, using John Schotter 2012, how do we respond to the demands of the situation? Because often we have our ideas, our scripts, our patterns of samskaras that kind of we react and respond in patterned ways. Kind of Harold Garfinkel ethnomethodology of what are our methods of being who we are. And there's a certain need for that. If I come to a four-way street and there's multiple cars there, it's good to know that we have a shared rule of how we're going to negotiate who crosses first and who stops. And there's many things that are part of these, patterns that we are part of and we take for granted. But I think what happens is over time we forget that these are social conventions, constructions, and patterns. There's a place for that. That's part of this ecology that we inhabit in our body and in the world that we live in, but it's acknowledging all parts of that ecology. So at times, as a therapist, it's like, what's my belly say? And sometimes what I hear verbally is like, no, that doesn't fit with what I feel. And then how do I deal with that? So I need to listen. Gut, heart, head, spirit, energy. So all of these aspects of me are important. My challenge, and probably the challenge of all of us, is to be awake, to be alert, to see that. Because it's easy to get caught up and trapped in other discourses. This is the coercive nature of discourses, social institutions, material demands, is we want, we need, we desire. But they shape me in ways, and I think they shape all of us in ways, that typically we don't see. Neoliberal ideology, and to the demands of who we are, our identity. We become commodities. We treat others as products. And this is the challenge of how do we resist those demands of discourses and social institutions and material realities to say, this is who I want to, what are the possibilities of who I can be in the becoming, the unfolding. And I like Francisco Varela's ideas right now, the Trinity of, it's not just a dialectic of me, you, self, other, but it's self, other, and together we're part of the world. So we can maintain kind of individuation, yet also connectedness. I think there's a tension, and I suspect it's everywhere, because it's not simply to our times, but it's historical and cultural, of individuality and community. And I've struggled with this in my own way, and I think we all have to probably figure out our path. And it's probably a process that one's always figuring out, because I want to be careful. There's not the answer. And it's not like, oh, do this, buy my product or do my method and you will get happy. I think that's part of the problem, is presenting it as if there is a fix. But it is a journey, and knowing that there's possibilities. So something that captures me at times is depression. And depression, I think part of it is endogenic, is part of it's my biological makeup. But I know some of the depression I've had has occurred from life events, from going through a divorce, from politics at work. And something I've learned over in the last few years too, in some of those politics, how people identify when one is depressed. Oh, you need to do something. it's my responsibility, therefore it's my illness, and therefore I should either talk to a therapist, God forbid I talk to a therapist, or I should take medication. And I resisted that, not because either of those things are bad ideas, but that it did something that defined me in a particular way. So this is not who I am. I am depressed, or I'm feeling, well, let me say that differently. I feel depressed. Depression has captured me, however I want to play with the words, but it's not me and it won't be forever, and I know this will pass, which helps me get through hard times. But I am also aware of community response, how others talk about it, define it, present it, has consequence, which is why I think community is so important in what we do. From the Taos Institute to whatever group one is a part of, we need community because it helps us to achieve, to become, and create possibilities. And I took an improvisational class when I was a second year and assistant professor. And I did it just because I knew I needed to do something that got me out of my chair and doing something active and fun. And I did not know what that meant. And I was in a group of about 7 people, great teacher, great group. It didn't matter if it was rehearsal or a performance, it was magical. And I've continued to write about this and think of how I can apply this to my teaching, to my clinical practice, to my way of being. I did a presentation once, Improv for Life, and talked about improv as how to live life. So premises of improv that I like to talk about and use is trusting, accepting whatever it is that the other person says, letting go of judgment, being present, no script writing. So I'm really listening, responding to what's being said right there. And I think all of those activities are wonderful ways of being in engagement with our partners, with our children, with anybody that we're doing anything with. So they are kind of great rules of life. It doesn't really have a way of talking about, oppression, power dynamics, hierarchical, relational power. And whereas I find improv is useful, it gives me tools. As improv developed, and Viola Spolin was one of the mothers of the improv movement, and she was at Hall House in Chicago, and she was using improv as a structure to help working with the youth to solve problems. And I quite like that analogy and talk about improv as a way to help us deal with relational, structural power issues. So it gives us a way to kind of work through the things we don't see.